Welcome to another edition of Women Who Work. Women Who Work is based off the concept of an individual or a group of individuals who do a performing task to an exceedingly abundant capacity. Today we have a great group of women, some elected officials and some aspiring to be elected officials, and we will talk about women in politics. According to an NPR article on women in politics, women make up a bigger share of national and state lawmakers than ever. And yet the share of women in major political positions remains disproportionately low. Women make up about 19% of all members of Congress and less than 25% of all members of state legislators. They also make up 6 of the nation's 50 governors, or 12%. Today we are hoping to change the conversation, change the perception, and get more women involved in the political process. I'd like to introduce our panel today. To my right is our County Executive, Kathy Dahlkemper, Liz Allen, Ms. Rubye Jenkins-Husband. To my left, Freda Tepfer, Cynthia Muhammad, Almi Clerkin, and School Board Director Angela McNair. Ladies, if you'd like to take maybe 30 seconds or 60 seconds to talk a little bit about yourselves.
Well, I'm a former councilwoman in the city of Erie, and I have 45 years of community experience. Worked in many community projects over the years, as well as representative to boards and authorities. And I'm currently running as a candidate for mayor for the city of Erie.
I'm Liz Allen. I worked at the Erie Times-News for more than 30 years as a reporter, copy editor, lifestyle editor, public editor, columnist, and now I'm running for Erie City Council. I'm retired from the newspaper, but I'm still doing some various freelance writing projects for a number of clients.
I'm Kathy Dahlkemper, the current county executive in Erie County. I am running this year for a second 4-year term. Previous to this, I served in the United States Congress. I've been a business owner. I've been a dietitian. I've started a nonprofit, and I'm a mother of 5 and grandmother of 7.
My name's Freda Tepfer, and I had a 25-year career in the environmental field, and I worked providing mobility training to blind and visually impaired people, which is why I'm here in Erie for about 6 years. I've been active as a community activist since I was a teenager, and I've had a lot of career experience with being the first or only woman in my profession.
I'm Cynthia Muhammad, and I'm running for school board as a write-in candidate. I am a publisher of the Erie Metropolitan Black Page Business Directory and Resource Guide, and I'm committed to making a difference, an advocate in the city, and also an early childhood major.
I'm Almi Clerkin. I'm running for mayor of the city of Erie. I am currently the executive director of the Erie Playhouse. I've been in that role for 11 years. I've been employed at the Playhouse for 25 years and a volunteer for 41. I'm married to Sean Clerkin, who's a professor at Gannon University and an Episcopal priest, and our son Seamus is a freshman at Gannon as well. And the reason I want to run for mayor is because I believe the executive leadership that I have will transfer right to City Hall, and we'll be able to do the work that we need to do to make Erie the best city we can be.
I'm Angela McNair. I currently sit on the Erie City School Board. I am a business owner. I own a early learning center. I also previously was a mental health therapist with children. I'm a mother of 5, a wife of Drew McNair, who is a supervisor at Perseus House, who also works with children. We run a boxing gym for children in the community, which is open and free for them to attend. I just want to continue on the school board, which is why I'm running for re-election, so that I can continue to be the voice of the parents and the children in our community.
Thank you, ladies, all for being here. We have such a diverse group of women here today that have had a lot of experience serving their community, but most importantly, they are passionate about making sure that there's change affected and also being leading role models to other women in our community. So I appreciate you all taking your time out to be here today. We're just going to jump into the questions. So in 2012, there was a report that was published by American University professor of government Jennifer Lawless and Loyola Marymount University political science professor Richard Fox. It did a study on potential candidates of both genders, people like lawyers and activists who might reasonably get involved in politics, to determine what was keeping women from running. They came up with 7 barriers, one of which was women were more likely than men to perceive the electoral environment as highly competitive and biased against female candidates. Can any of you speak to that statement and whether you agree or disagree, or even Kathy, if you've experienced that yourself?
So I certainly think that women are very hesitant to jump into the political fray, sometimes because of the negative atmosphere of it and maybe what they perceive as kind of a negative place to go. In today's culture, politicians aren't thought of very highly, often seen as somehow corrupt or somehow gaming the system or somehow gaining something for themselves. And in the past, it was thought, I think, much more of a nobler profession. I believe it is a noble profession, but I think that's maybe part of the reason. But I do think that there has been a bias over years, many, many years, with women having a harder time jumping in. And I say that because I believe the parties who often go out and try to recruit the candidates, both parties, Republican and Democrat, when they're looking for a candidate, it's often a man that they think about, and they don't think about what women might be out there and be able to run. I believe that is changing, but it's been a slow change. And I think demonstrated here today is so many great women stepping up in our community and running for office. It's a positive change that's happening.
And Selena, one of the things, that question really made me think, the question that you posed. So I went and I got the actual study, Girls Just Want to Not Run. So I think it's a great pun headline, I'm thinking as a journalist. So I was thinking of 2 things. One of the things this study found is that younger men are more likely to have participated in competitive sports. So we always hear about that. And I always used to think that the model was that if you were in sports, you learned about teamwork. But no, what this study is saying is that boys learn at an early age. You got to win, you got to win. So I was thinking, so do you change the paradigm to kind of get at what Kathy was talking about in terms of changing the conversation? Do we want to make it a noble profession where you're doing this for public service? But then, as I was sitting here, I thought of another thing we can take away from this study, which is I never played sports. I love sports. I was listening to the Seawolves on my way out here. I never played sports except basketball once in 8th grade, and I was horrible at it. But what if we started thinking about where else do you compete? And I started thinking about myself as a journalist. I realized, my God, I had a competitive streak. I wanted to get that story. I wanted to beat, when we had TV and radio that we were competing against. So maybe we have to re-examine how we're defining actual competition. Maybe it's not about making a basket or scoring a touchdown, or, although I'm glad that I have granddaughters who are very competitive in sports. I think it's a generational thing. How else can we tell people, you are competitive at what you're doing? Say Almi's out there competing. The Playhouse has competed on the international stage. I'm looking at Cynthia competing with her Metropolitan Black Yellow Pages. So that's what I took away from this. So thank you for asking the question, making me think.
Well, thank you,
Well,
Liz, and thank you for your
And I
input.
think it is a good conversation piece. I see it as a level playing field in many respects. I think culture has a lot to do with it too. I know growing up in my household, it was, you can always be what you want to be. Mm-hmm. And you should strive to do that. And so over the years, that's pretty much how I have been driven in all of my walks of life, is where I start is believing that this is where I can be. Mm-hmm. So one of the parts of what you can be is your enthusiasm about changing things. Over the years of public service, have you made a difference, and how can you make a difference? And I often tell people, and I've had young people talk to me, or people who want to get in politics are thinking about it, and as we go into the conversation, they say, well, I have been working in the community. I see this needs to be done, that needs to happen. And I said, well, why don't you really think about running for office, public office? Because you have a lot of ideas about what you think can happen. And so here again, I think it is about the enthusiasm. And women's right to vote did not happen until 1920. Let's think about it. We have a lot of catching up
That was
to
my
do.
angle.
Yeah.
And so when you really look at that playing field, whether it's level or not, we were not there for many years. You know, when the Constitution was written, I thought about it. I said, what would have happened if we were there? If we were there.
This month actually marks the 100th year when the first woman entered the U.S. Congress, 1917, Jeanette Rankin. And she was from Montana. They gave women the right to vote before the rest of the country because they wanted to get women to move to Montana. But she ran, and so we have, as Rubye said, not as long of a history. And I think the other thing that's happening is with more women running, it gives you the image of somebody who looks like you, who's actually running for office and many times succeeding. And so that is always going to be something that encourages other people to do the same when they have great ideas, and we do as women.
So as I mentioned, my career included 25 years of being in the environmental field. I was the first female teaching assistant in agronomy at Iowa State University. I was the first woman soil scientist in the Forest Service in Region 1. And it's not dissimilar to the kind of cronyism I experienced when I was on the Arlington City Council in Washington and when I work in or am exposed to politics here in Erie. There's a lot of cronyism. There's a lot of built-in old boys network kind of feeling, and that hasn't changed. I'm not an athlete. I don't belong to the social clubs that the guys belong to. What I am is, as my friend called me, beyond astounding person in my ability to find and use information. So I have found ways to try to make myself indispensable and to make small changes in ways. I have an excellent working relationship with the traffic engineer in this town, and she knows that when I send her information about a problem, it's a really credible problem, and she sends somebody out and fixes it. So that's how I have been able to make change, and that's not running for office, but what I'm saying is it's a hard climate, and you have to develop a thick skin, and we have to have our own support network because the guys do, and that is an issue.
Well, and I think, too, exactly, and you hit the nail on the head, women are good at change. We can adapt to change. And I also think, based on all the issues we've been talking about in these months leading up to all these elections, the problems will be solved with a we attitude, not a me attitude. Right. And women are really good at the we and including other people in the decision making. So I think that will be important. But and we have women that we can look to. You know, we can look to Rubye and we can look to Kathy for their work and your work. The people that are in those positions now and the people that came before us. So we almost owe them as well. And then we will have to be great mentors so that more young women can come into this profession.
Thank you. That is a good segue into our next question because also in the study they found that some women usually don't feel like they're qualified enough to run. I heard it a little bit, Fred, in what you were saying, and we talk about, well, I may not have the social connections, I may not have the deep pockets, I may not be able to be as well connected, or I don't have the education. And so what do you think of that when you hear other women say that they don't feel as qualified, or even have you felt that yourself sometimes?
I think as we have grown up in the schools here in Erie, especially, that we are not given the opportunity to even think about things like that. We think about men being in charge and we sit in that position, but like Rubye, myself being the oldest of 13 children, you can be anything you want to be, and that's what we were taught. So I just like to meet the challenge by confronting whatever is there and going ahead and doing whatever I want to do, just to be a part of it. I find it challenging.
Okay. Angela, let's hear from you. We haven't heard from you yet.
Well, I will say, I'll agree that, women had a late start, which kind of, has put some people in a mind frame of, we are community servants. We play our role in the community, but we don't necessarily have to take the leadership role. And I think that as a woman, as a younger woman, that you just have to be confident enough to know that you can sit in that leadership position, that you don't have to sit back and just allow other people to take that position because you think that they're they have more experience or they are more connected, because as a person who had no political background besides maybe volunteering with Gary and passing out flyers for other people's campaigns, who just dove right into it thanks to Selena, because she's the one who actually put me up to run into school board. She probably didn't even think about that, but that's the honest to goodness truth. I met her in the parking lot at Wayne School, and she's like,
Getting Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, getting Girl Scout cookies, and she's like, you should run for school board. And it was like, the weekend before we had to hand in petitions. So I had to go out and be confident enough to get over 100 signatures on my petition within about 2 or 3 days, and just know that, even though this person is running, that person is running, having enough confidence to know that I could still win no matter what, because the work that I've done in the community stands and speaks for itself. People know me because I do work. When you put the work in, you should be confident enough to know that your work can precede you and speak for itself in order to support what you're trying to do. So I think that we should encourage young women to create a foundation of service and networking, so that they will be confident enough to run for office and knowing that they could win. There is a strong possibility that they could win.
And that was actually one of the points of that, what the factors they identified that contribute to the gender gap. One of them says, young women are less likely than young men to receive encouragement to run for office from anyone. So, you talk about mentoring, you're talking about networking. Rubye talked about actually speaking to people and saying, why don't you run for office? And Selena, I didn't realize that you had the role in encouraging Angela to run, but what a great thing to learn here, because that's how you get into it. I can't tell you how many conversations I have had with Kathy Dahlkemper, not about running for office, but how did you do it? How did you hang in there when you were running for Congress? How did you stick it out when you ran for re-election? How do you deal with the thin skin kind of worries that are out there? And she gave me some great advice, telling me about there's 1/3 of the people that you're going to reach, 1/3 that are never going to like you, and the other third are kind of in the middle. And I think about that. It doesn't always work, but I think about it a lot. So being able to ask the questions of other women, and then having women who encourage you and your family who encourages you, that's so important. And that jumped out at me. It's like, okay, now I can go and encourage somebody else.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why
I would like to talk about that qualifications. Yeah, if I could, on qualifications. I'd just go back to the family if I could, just for a bit here. I was the youngest of 11 children, and my father, Mom, they always said that education was a key to opportunities, along with hard work. And so when we talk about qualifications, I think about it and I say, we're in a position now, and I'm in a position where I look back on those things that I've done over the years and where I've come to this point. And this point is saying now I feel most confident of my qualifications, that I could put it out there for people to compare to, and more so that I feel good about where I am with my qualifications. That it's in that realm of things. So I'm glad we did have that discussion on qualifications.
And I would go to Rubye on many occasions, because I'd worked with her on different programs when she was on the school board, Prairie Street Development Corporation being one of those programs, and said to her several times, when are you going to run for mayor? And finally, when she announced, I was very surprised and happy that she made that commitment, because she did so many things with the Prairie Street Development Corporation to let us know that she cared about what was going on in the city. And being an advocate for the city and being on different boards and following some of our older people in the city that worked in politics and things like that, it was just the commitment to get out there and get involved. And so at one time I was judge of elections at 18th and at the Booker T. Washington Center for years, following Irma Lindsay. I'm sure you all probably don't even remember who she was, but she worked very hard in the city to make a difference, and I'm committed to making a difference. I believe your voice is your vote, and I'd like to speak for people who won't speak for themselves.
I think men have always kind of had an easier time being filled with bravado and just kind of moving forward. And personally, I always feel the need to know the truth and to have all the facts in front of me, and that can be an impediment. Some of my heroines and I didn't grow up in Erie, but Florence Kennedy, Bella Abzug, women who were not shrinking violets by any means, but they also they did amazing things. They did wonderful things. They were also sometimes a little ridiculed for it, but I think we do need to have these heroines to inspire us, and to not feel like you have to know everything in order to move forward. People told me when I said, gee, I don't know if I should run because I'm not from here, and they'd say, well, you're really good, you know what you're talking about. So I just decided I'll do it. What the heck.
You know, there's been some research to that point where women often think, well, I need to get another degree, or I need to do this for a few more years, or I need to improve their skills in some way. And men, on the other hand, will just like wake up in the morning and look at the mirror and say, you know what, I'm going to run for office today. So we, I think as women, have to encourage each other. And that's what I love hearing. And honestly, the research shows that women have to be asked much more often than men. It's, they don't just decide on their own. So it behooves all of us who have decided to take that plunge to, when we see other women who have passion, who have qualifications and may not see it themselves, to ask them to run and encourage them to do the same.
And I think after the grilling of Anita Hill, that women became more committed to getting out and making a difference, and being involved in politics after that did occur.
Well, we could stay on this one question for forever. We still have a couple more to go, okay? And I know some of us have some time constraints this afternoon, so we want to keep moving. And I do have to speak to the encouraging women to run, which is one of our later questions, as most of you know, with you, Kathy, to take that, because she encouraged me to run, which encouraged me to encourage Angela to run. So you see how that kind of went. And I hear that a lot. That's something that Kathy is great at, is getting people involved, especially women and young people involved in the political process. And so I always say thank you, but thank you again.
I would say thank you to Kathy too, because when I was running and I was a little discouraged, she's like, oh no, come run, come pass out flyers with my crew, or you can do it, or so she's very much an encouragement to the younger women running for office. So she was there for me too.
I think that's great to encourage the younger women because they do have the future, and the more we get them trained and involved, the better off we're going to be as a community.
Right, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we keep going, but I want to hear, as we keep talking about encouraging women, what influenced you or inspired you to run, if we can answer that quickly. I want to hear that from everyone, if everybody can answer.
Well,
that
first
question.
I'll start with my family. I had a strong family. We were about public service. From my mom, my sisters, my brothers, we were just a household of people in community helping to make a difference. And then there was my sister, who was president of Highland Park City Council. And many nights we would often talk about governance issues. And so she was a big influence in my life. And then I remember meeting Shirley Chisholm one night at Allegheny College. And we talked very briefly. We said hello. And then it went from hello, and then the conversation was, I think you have potentials to make a difference beyond where you are because of our conversation. And so it was a lot of good dialogue about women in politics. I wanted to know more about how she got in politics in 1872. She ran for president of this United States of America. And she shared with me what drove her to run for office, and she felt at that time she could make a difference, and how. And then there was her action in the legislation, the many things that she did from that point of view. So when I look back, those are the things that most benefited me and influenced me to make a difference in the political side of it. And you know, when we talk about making a difference in people's lives, it's good that we can all sit back and say, those persons we talked to along the way are those persons who talked to me along the way. And I know, as Cynthia mentioned, I've had many conversations with people in the community who I thought could make a difference if they ran. And so it's good that those discussions have paid off. Yes.
Originally, because I guess I still have that journalism instinct, so when I had the questions, I thought I have to sit down and think about these and write them out. So I did like 7 or 8 different things about what my inspiration was. My first instinct was to say the Women's March, because I went to the Women's March in Washington, and I know a lot of women here were also at the one in Erie, and there was just something so empowering about being there at that peaceful march. And when I came back, 2 different groups of women, 2 different like circles I'm in with friends said, well, now what? Now what, Liz? So, and they didn't say run for city council, but they kind of looked to me to say, okay, you can tell us what's going to be next. But then I started thinking you have to give credit where credit is due. And I think Selena will appreciate this, because I started going back a little bit further, and I realized that in this book club we were in, which began as a book club, really interesting book club, not to read novels, but to read books about women and then about social justice. So I think we started with Lean In, and then we read the Short Tragic Life of Robert Peace, I think, and then Just Mercy. So we were thinking about social issues, and then we got to the point where we said, okay, we're going to look at the Erie Refocused Plan. This is a book club that decided like right after Erie Refocused came out, that we were going to study the comp plan. So I realized without those women from the book club who said, let's look at what we can do about social justice, and then let's drill down and figure out how we can help the city, I would not have done this. So I think the seed was planted then. So, and plus Sister Mary Lou Kanaki, who's a Benedictine. I ran to her after somebody asked me if I would run. I said, I'm thinking about running. She kind of gave me her blessing. So that was my third thing.
So I really never thought I would run for political office, and then it was about 10 years ago that someone asked me. And it was because, I guess I go back to the moment when we invaded Iraq, and I was extremely upset about that. I felt that our country was going down a path that would not be positive, and I think obviously over the years we've shown that that's the truth. So it was through that that I became much more politically active, and so I think there's often something that you don't like, something that disturbs you, that you jump in. And I'd always been active in the community, but not really in a political way. So then it was talking about that. It was 2007 and the height sort of the anti-Bush era, and I decided to run for the United States Congress. After I lost that seat 2 years later, then I was thinking, well, I think I'm pretty good at engaging people, and I really want to make a difference, and I see politics as being the place where you can probably affect the greatest change in your community is by being involved on a political sense in elected office. And I really love Erie County. I believe that we have not reached our full potential. We have so many more great things that can happen, and that's when I decided to run for county executive. I'm running again because there are good things happening, and there's things that I've moved forward, and I want to continue to move forward, and I think I've done a really great job of collaborating. But it all starts, I think, with that one thing that sort of, you just like, I've had enough, and I have to jump in and try to make a difference. I have to try to make that change, and the best way to make a change is to be at the table. I always say, if we're not sitting at the table, we're on the menu.
Well, as I mentioned, I was on a city council in Arlington, Washington, and when I moved here, some of the things that I watched the trees going down along the promenade at the Bayfront, and those what I consider ridiculous signs along the Bayfront Parkway. I saw towers being built at Perry Square that are actually an impediment to people who are blind and visually impaired crossing the street safely. And even a sighted person, I was almost creamed by a right turner who didn't see me because of the towers being in the way. I've been involved for 2 years with the effort to save the East Street Viaduct. A lot of those efforts have shown me that there's a disconnect between what is going on in the city and open process. It's very hard to get on a board or a commission in this city if you don't already know somebody. We have yet to have had a single public meeting since the comp plan was approved, even though the author of the plan continues to say that should have been done. I've been vocal in these areas, and people have, when I've mentioned that I want to run, people have encouraged me to do so, and I believe I have the ability to I'm kind of a contrarian, but I think contrarians are important. But I also am a collaborative person and a solution finder, and it's kind of like the chipmunks. I think they have to keep gnawing at a piece of wood or their teeth will grow too long. And I need to be able to be engaged because I have that energy. And so to me, running for office is a very logical thing to do.
And for me, like Rubye, my mother grew up in, I think Rubye grew up in Laurel, Mississippi.
Yes.
And that must have been the theme, to get up and do whatever you can do for yourself.
Yeah, you can do it.
That you can do, and always encouraged to do for self. And I also attended the Million Woman March in D.C. many years ago. And those were some of the things that they talked about. Get out, get involved in your community and make a difference. And so I am committed to making a difference as an advocate and following, I'll say, Irma Lindsay and Paul Martin, people like that worked in the city. Then you were taught to get up and do something, that you could make a difference, and they encourage you to do just that. And also I think it's so important that I'm 68, and I think it's important that we make a difference so that the young women like Angela behind us will do the same thing and keep that going, because especially working with the children are our future. If we don't do something as nurturers, women, then things won't get done. Men don't have that nurturing in them. So we need to get out and make a difference.
Just like you ladies, my family is very inspirational to me. I have excellent role models, and my dad, God bless him, and my mom. So, and also my brothers told me at age 10 I should be mayor of the city of Erie. So it started back then. I think maybe because I was a little bossy. I'm not quite sure. But last summer, I'm done at the Erie Playhouse August 31st of coming up in 2017. And last summer I got a call from Dr. David Kozak, who said, would you consider running for mayor? And that was in June, and I think I decided in November. It's a big decision. I talked to several people along the way, Kathy included. But I think timing has a lot to do with it as well. And when I look back and you think about your experiences and where life's brought you so far, and when I think about the work I've done as a Playhouse, as a leader there, transforming an organization into a really well-respected organization, working with thousands of people in a year, working with a large budget, these are things that I can do and do well. The strength I have is building partnerships. And in everything we've done since November, I've probably met with 50 people in the city to learn more about what they do and how they work together. And obviously we're intrinsically intertwined. So I think that's important. And when you do theater, which I do it as a hobby, my job at the Playhouse is not the theater portion, it's everything else. But when you do theater, you need a team and you need a group, a dynamic group to get work done. And everything that we know from the plans that have been developed, we know we have to work together to do this. Again, my father, very influential. The biggest thing he taught me was plan the work, work the plan. And when I'm successful, that's because I do that. And in Joyce Savacchio's first campaign, my grandmother is Joyce's godmother, and my father helped in her first campaign. And I remember him, the excitement of it and the enjoyment of it. And so all these things came flooding back to me. And I think it's time, when I'm done at the Playhouse, that I still have the energy and the compassion for our community, and I want to move it forward, so I'm going to do that.
One of the things that influenced me was just when I started, with the Obama campaign the first time, and I started getting really involved with volunteering and registering people to vote, and thinking that, as an African American female, I can make a difference too. I just don't have to sit back and watch and see everybody else taking that step forward in leadership. So I started becoming a little bit more involved in politics at that point, but never thinking about running, but just more of a support person, someone who would be there to help whoever would want to run, get things accomplished. My uncle was on city council. He made history by being on city council. I just come from a background of community servants. Everybody in my family was into community service. My mom, all my aunts and uncles, they have nonprofits or things like that. I've always volunteered. I've always worked with children. Even as a child, I volunteered at the JFK to be a tutor for other kids. I'm in high school and I'm tutoring kids that are in grade school. So it was just like something that I've always been into as far as like public service, and I guess running for office just took it to a next level. I didn't necessarily feel like I was ready to run for office until like Selena kind of just was like, you do so much, why don't you run for office? And I'm like, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing. But once I actually signed up for it and started realizing what I got myself into, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta, really put in some work here. So I hit the ground running, knowing that I had the experience that I needed in order to sit on the Board of Education, knowing that I have children in the Erie Public Schools educational system, knowing that I was working with families throughout the whole county who has children in the educational system back then as a therapist, and then as I'm running for re-election now, knowing that, with owning a early childhood learning center, that I work, I will be, and I do work hand in hand with Erie's public schools, with transitioning children into kindergarten, as well as the school-age children that we deal with. I just feel like this is my time to be in this position. My last 4 years, I did a lot of advocating and things like that, but I think this 4 years is going to be more of a leadership role, because I've sat back, I've watched people do things right, and I've watched people do things very wrong. So I feel like, now is the time where, I need to put my leadership skills into play more so than sitting just in the background as an advocate. So that's what has inspired me to keep going in this office, is that, I do have leadership skills, I do have business skills, and I think that, it should be applied more so this term maybe than it was last term as being an advocate, so that we can take some steps forward, and then with my children continuing to be in the school systems, it helps me know and have a closer look as to what's going on. And I feel like I need to be there, because there's so many things that I had to advocate for as a parent that I know other parents need as well. And I may get the upper hand because I'm on the school board, but I don't want anyone who's not in that position to feel like they can't have the same things for their children that people who are in position have for theirs.
And so it's important, clearly, that our family and that we have great core groups of people that can influence and inspire us. And so all of you who are here today were inspired by someone at some point to get into the political process. And for that, I thank you. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back and finish wrapping up this portion of the show. And we're back. And so we've talked about what influenced these women to run, their compassion and empathy for the community, why they're dedicated to service. We've heard a little bit about their backgrounds. We've heard about some of their platforms for the offices that they're running for. And so we actually are going to get ready to wrap up, but I wanted to hear from each person in the end, 30 seconds or less, ladies. If you could just kind of sum up yourself, your final closing remarks, what maybe something you didn't get to say. We'll start down here at this end, since I stuck it.
All I can say is that I'm in a position right now where I need to be on the school board, as being a mother of kids in school, as being a person who works in the community, and a person who works with children in the community, that I do have something to bring to the table, and I just look forward to serving another 4 years.
And I'm excited for the opportunity to be mayor and to give Erie an option of a different kind of candidate, never being in the political scene before, but the executive experience that I have will bring all the work together and bring all the groups together that need to face the serious issues that Erie has, and then help promote Erie too, because I'd like to be the voice for all that's good in Erie as well.
And I, like Angela, am committed to working with the youth and being a part of the community, making a difference. And it's so important that we have an atmosphere where children know that they're special and that they can make a difference, and we want to encourage them to do just that also. And also I believe that, and I know that women fought to gain the right to be in positions like we are running for today, and that we would bring fairness and equality into the process by being a part of that. And as I said before, your vote is your voice. Cynthia Muhammad, running for school board. let me speak for you. The children are our future.
I think that at this time, Erie can't afford to make decisions without having real involvement by the whole community. They can't afford to make land use decisions giving away an opportunity to put in a sidewalk, for example, when they could have. I think we need to have a strong council that acts independently. We need to have open access to the vacancies on our boards and commissions. We need to have real public involvement with the implementation of our comprehensive plan, and we need to make Erie truly a year-round pedestrian-friendly city. And those are some of my biggest concerns, and I think I can really make a difference for Erie.
Well, I think this is just a wonderful panel of women. I look forward, hopefully, in the next 4 years to working with all or most of you to really move this region forward. That's really what it takes. And I think women at the table bring a different perspective. Women look at things differently. And I always say it's not that we're all better legislators, better executives, better members of council, but our community, our county, our country really will be better when women's voices are heard and there in equal numbers. So I look forward to working with these women, and I also encourage every woman watching this today to think about running at some point for office.
And I'm going to echo what Kathy said. I think hearing everybody speak today, talking about building some networks to encourage more women to run for office. Freda's always made a good point about who is on those boards and authorities. I know that when I was at the newspaper, I used to create a spreadsheet of who was serving on the various authorities, and I had to recreate my spreadsheet. There aren't diverse voices on those authorities. I'm doing a sort on male, female, people of color. When I was at the newspaper, we had reader members of the editorial board, and we were able to go to Project Blueprint, which was done by the nonprofit foundation, which had people who were trained for boards. We need to somehow revive that idea.
And I'm looking forward, too, for collaboration and partnerships with everyone. Over the years, I think the experience is most important when you talk about leadership. And I joined the JFK Center in 1973 to help the executive director at that time build a multi-purpose center, and we've done that. We've had leadership development programs, senior citizens, early childhood education. All of those things are necessary to help change lives for the good. I've worked on projects in the city, the Dixon Tavern, helping to save the tavern. I've worked on Parade Street development. I've worked on citywide revitalizations. We have many healthy neighborhoods that I've worked on Lower Parade Street in Central City. Those are many projects that were led by collaboration and partnerships and working with the neighbors who live there, helping to make a difference. That's what I bring to this office, 12 years of work on city council and experience in governance. So I ask for your consideration on May 16th to vote for leadership, vote for experience, and vote for vision to move Erie forward. Thank you.
Well, although the number of women right now currently serving in our nation is not a large number, I am proud to say that I know women are on the rise, that they are getting involved, and it's evident today with the women that sit on my left and right that our future as women leaders in politics is bright, and it's not stopping. Actually, I think it's just really starting to blaze. And so as we move forward, we want to continue to inspire, to encourage, to work together in collaboration and community with one another with compassion and love, and not only make Erie a great place for all of us to live, but most importantly, a place where people can look to see that women's leadership is needed, it's necessary, and it's on the forefront. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you're not registered to vote in Erie County, please do so by April 17th, because as said earlier, your vote is your voice. Thank you for watching.